having offered our advice to Russia and Putin, right? This is the weak side of Putin, is this. Why did he have people like Gref and Kudrin in power until only a couple of years ago? And with Kudrin, he's apparently trying to come back in through the back door. Anatoly Chubais is on one of the advisory boards of J.P. Morgan Chase. Anatoly Chubais is a member of the New York Council on Foreign Relations. It is a foreign faction. The neoliberals in Russia are a foreign body projected in there by the U.S., the Federal Reserve, the British, the Bank of England, the International Monetary Fund, and so on down the line. Larry Summers was a big guy in the course of this, right? It was in the name of these neoliberals that the parliament was shot to hell in 1992 when it was being occupied, remember, by Khaspulatov and those people, right? The red-brown group. Well, red-brown I think is overdone, but you see, the goal was to make Russia safe for the IMF shock therapy, and the Russian people have been taken to the cleaners twice, in 91, 92, a hyperinflation of 1,500%, and then again in 1998, the state bankruptcy, the GKO default on Russian state debt in 1998, which was the peak of the Asian contagion. And now, apropos of that, if we go back to 1998, we have all of these clowns who are gloating. They're going to break the back of the Russian economy, say these Anglo-American parrots, consultants in the press. One of them, in a moment of lucidity, asked, I think, a very important question. Before you go ahead and try to break the back of the Russian economy, dear friends, says this guy, and it's in the Washington Post somewhere, he says, don't you want to think about what that will mean for the world? Now, concerning the breaking of the back may be ultra vires. In other words, it's not clear whether the Anglo-Americans can break the back of the Russian economy. I would incline to say they probably can't break the back, but they can do tremendous damage. The Anglo-American financial power remains enormous. And remember, compared to 1998, you've now got credit default swaps that can be used to attack a currency. And we've seen in the case of the drachma, the peseta, the lira, the various state bonds of those countries that used to be in those denominations. In other words, the Greeks, the Spanish, the Italians, and so forth. That's all credit default swaps that you have today that you really didn't have, at least in that form, in 1998, 1999. So, if we look back, though, to 1998, what do we see? When the Russian economy got into severe difficulty, and again, bank deposits were wiped out, there was quite a bit of hyperinflation going around. What was the effect here in the West? Well, there was something called long-term capital management of Connecticut. Long-term capital management. And what happened to them? They blew, and they had various Federal Reserve people on their board. This was a real dirty, speculative derivatives operation at the time. And this blew a hole of what, $10, $20 billion of those days, 1998, into the world economy. And they were immediately given a backdoor bailout by Alan Greenspan. And man, you can read all about this in Surviving the Cataclysm, the second edition in particular. So all of that's what the thing that set the stage for the 2008 bailout was the backdoor bailout by Greenspan 10 years earlier, just about exactly. So my question now is, if in 1998 the spin-off, the byproduct of the attack on Russia was long-term capital management, who is it this time? Who is the long-term capital management of this round of economic warfare against Russia, right? So And remember, this is boomerang time, right? It's like you let off poison gas in front of your own trenches and the wind blows it back on you. The wind changes. That can easily happen. So, which one of the zombie banks or the hedge fund hyenas, I would say quite a few hedge fund hyenas, we have word of one of the subsets of PIMCO, which had invested in Russian bonds. They're obviously in big trouble. Will that drag down at PIMCO as a whole? Right? PIMCO is troubled because we had Bill Gross driven out of PIMCO. So PIMCO may be in trouble. Who knows? And that's just the biggest bond fund. All the little people have bought bonds with PIMCO, thinking that that's valuable. Well, they've got one fund that seems to have made the wrong bet. Whether that turns into long-term capital management, I do not know. Time will tell, but always a defensive position for the individual, the little person in these situations is in order. But then it's more complicated, right? It's not just Russia that's hit by a lower oil price. And we have to say, who is the evil demiurge behind this whole thing? It's Prince Bandar. This is Bandar. Remember, Bandar had gone to Putin about a year ago and said, Putin, you stop supporting Assad or we will terrorize you with terrorism. And Putin, I guess, threw him out or told him the interview was over. Bandar. I call Bandar the new Herod of this holiday season. The new Herod, Prince Bandar of Saudi Arabia, right? The dominant figure of the royal family and the intelligence operation. If anybody says pump oil like mad to hit Russia, to hit Iran, and to hit others, even these shale characters in the U.S., who we don't really need, that's Bandar. So the new Herod. And we'll be back in a minute on World Crisis Radio. The last segment of our Christmas week program. Best wishes to everybody. Best wishes for Hanukkah and all other festivities. Kwanzaa, if that's your holiday, and any others that I've forgotten, right? Because the idea is peace and goodwill towards people. And in line with that, remember, the slogan for this holiday season is Peace on Earth, Fire Allen. Peace on Earth, Fire ISIS Czar Allen. Merry Christmas, Fire Allen for Christmas. You get the idea with those hashtags, those sharps out in front, right? The deasis out in front. So we're looking at who's going to be the next long-term capital management. One other thing I've got to remember, we are going to have this course. It's going to be in the Washington area. It's looking more and more possible to do something around the 23rd, 24th, 25th of January. That is between MLK and the Stupor Bowl being February 1st. But we're going to be here, not stupefied, but with a total immersion weekend short course, right? Be the equivalent of an actual 10 or 12-week academic course in many ways. So the rest of the holiday season, who's going to be the next long-term capital management? Right? That can be masked, I guess, during Christmas, but by the first couple of weeks of January, you're going to see who's going to blow. Who is LTCM this time? Read about it in Surviving the Cataclysm. But there are others now. Venezuela could blow. If Venezuela blows, which New York zombie banks will blow? Right? Used to be Citibank was the leader in Latin loans. Argentina, the Fed's, this character, Judge Griesa, has been attempting to drive Argentina into default. Maybe he'll succeed, and maybe it'll be Argentina and Venezuela. Will that blow enough of a hole? So this entire thing is very, very shaky. And, of course, the other thing that Putin might well consider is look at the BRICS and look at the BRICS Bank. The BRICS Bank can do all sorts of things. The BRICS Bank can also be of assistance vis-a-vis Russia, not for the purpose of throwing money down the rat hole of trying to support the ruble. Put those controls on and then use that money for joint ventures with China, with India, and so forth, and build up that BRICS Bank, because that's the real defense. In the name of these neoliberals that the parliament was shot to hell in 1992. When it was being occupied, remember, by Khaspulatov and those people, right? The red-brown group. Well, red-brown I think is overdone, but you see, the goal was to make Russia safe for the foreign faction. The neoliberals in Russia are a foreign body projected in there by the U.S., the Federal Reserve, the British, the Bank of England, the International Monetary Fund, and so on down the line. Larry Summers was a big guy in the course of this, right? It was in IMF shock therapy, and the Russian people have been taken to the cleaners twice. In 91, 92, a hyperinflation of 1,500%, and then again in 1998, the state bankruptcy, the GKO default on Russian state. Having offered our advice to Russia and Putin, right? This is the weak side of Putin, is this. Why did he have people like Gref and Kudrin in power until only a couple of years ago? And with Kudrin, he's apparently trying to come back in through the back door. Anatoly Chubais is on one of the advisory boards of J.P. Morgan Chase. Anatoly Chubais is a member of the New York Council on Foreign Relations. It is a